Good morning, everybody. Well, that was an amazing day yesterday. And, I thought later on after entering that long on the S&Ps and, um, I guess we could refer to it as like a painless trade, like it never gave a doubt at the time as it was going up. Every little minor jiggle that it tried to go down and came back up again. And so it was an awesome trade for 10 minutes. And then seeing later on, S&Ps continue to go up. And it reinforced the whole concept of a void. And I know we're looking at SPX here, but, as it turned up and it just entered that void, it just kept going. And so the thought that I had later on was, you know what? What's the takeaway from leaving that money on the table as to the possibility of, exploiting the next time? So the void concept was there. There was, we talked about this high open interest situations and, that was an influence, but the void was truly the power, and we call the power of the void. And you can see it here on the 15-minute chart. There was just nothing to stop it from going up. But one of the things that I've experienced and would share with everybody is that, those type of trades that you can see that there's a void, and the type that they just give you no reason to want to, any powerful reason to think about selling. One of the things I've talked about in recently is that, certain trades, I say they just moving too slow, because when there's strong demand there and there's certainty about what's happening, things don't move slow. It's just the opposite, where you can't get on board. And so I anticipated that it would go up, based on the intraday patterns, got in early before the breakout, added to it as it broke out, and then as it reached a resistance area, exited the trade. And then it continued to go up into the void. So what I share, the takeaway is that, you have this void concept. It was down a lot from last week. And then just the fact that things went up without any concern, pretty much, as it went higher, was a tell that there was the potential for it to just keep going. And it did. So I was very happy with the trade, the way it unfolded, and, really didn't pull back at all, but there was a lot more in it. And so I figured I would share that with you. All right. So big green bar, and there were reversals everywhere yesterday. And so now we have to put them in the context of the individual, stocks and or sectors or indices, and see, what does that mean? Meaning, should this repair the damage? Should we now think, only from the long side? And it, depending on where we look, and I think kind of what happens over the next 2 days will answer that much better. But, the way things went down last week was powerful, and it was broad-based. So, technology held up the best. And while it lagged, and I mentioned, this early yesterday, I think it was pre-market and certainly the room, was that, it was likely that what was beaten down would outperform. And it did. So now we've got this big bar in SPX. Things had come down under this pivot low, which breaks the uptrend. And now, if this can get back up here, over the next 2 days, and today's likely to be a consolidation day. It's into this resistance. It's a wide range bar. A lot of times that's followed by a narrow range bar, and then we see where it all goes from there. But one of my comments in the letter over the weekend, was, as bad as everything looked, like, this market's a little crazy. And so regardless of this particular market, anytime we see a break in there. The breaks were more or less severe depending on where you look. Anytime that the depth of retracement back in the other direction, the more it can regain, the greater the probability that we're at a minimum going to see more sideways price action now. So depending on where we look, what happens today, we'll see how it just plays out over the coming days. So as wacky as this market is, and when I say wacky, I mean it just does things that are unexpected. Do I want to see that low taken out? Well, yeah. Well, Steven said more neutral slop, and that could be. But when I'm saying the market kind of wacky, what would be the least thing? Well, if I can talk my own perspective, what would be the least thing that you would expect to happen, or one of the least things that you would expect to happen after yesterday? And for me, that would be a giant red bar that closed under the low of yesterday, because that just typically doesn't happen. And we'll see. But yesterday's move, just like the void allowed it to continue to move up, it has also created a void. And so this is our thought process. And so looking at the SPX intraday chart, see this nice little consolidation here, which is bullish. And this, as it ran up here, it created support as it came into resistance, and it went sideways versus pulling back. That's bullish price action. And it created a pivot, which created new higher level of support. So if it breaks below here, and we'll look at the futures, if it breaks below here, it opens up the door to falling all the way back. Now, it doesn't have to. That's just one part of what we call the factory work and the thought process. It could dip below here, hit 4,200 and come ripping right back again. So just like we look at a wide range bar down and say it should stay in the lower 50%, well, now we've got a big green bar. I mean, it's in the context of this weekly chart, which is retraced, and that's not done yet. But now in this time frame, we should want to see it stay in the upper half of the green bar. So it could dip down and come back again. And, in the intraday charts, it just becomes a mess, of course. But if it's super bullish, that, demand is that great, it'll pull back to this pivot, and buyers will show up again, and it'll pop back up, and we'll go back and forth, and we'd get that consolidation in the upper third or so of this green bar today. All right, so let's see how other things are looking. So there's the spiders, and you see it came right up and hit the 20 MA, but they gap down under the pivot. It's into that, that little support there. And so that retracement is pretty good, but the breakdown here, it could go sideways, it's into resistance. We got to see now, this was the easy part, right? That's the easy part. Now, as it comes up here, those that were buying here and got caught up at the highs and maybe bought, the dip here and so on, those people be like, damn, this is a miracle. I'm going to get my money back. And so it just makes sense that there's going to be some supply and sellers here, and we'll see how it unfolds today. That's what we do. Support, resistance, trend. Does it break the trend? What happens when it gets to a reference point? What's the reaction to it? You can see the same type of little consolidation there. We're at 421, went to 421 and a half. So basically unchanged, give or take. Pretty good for a start. And we'll see what happens as the trading starts, but breaking below here would be a short-term bearish event, and then we'll see. Do buyers want to step up somewhere in here where there's nothing and create new support again? Futures, monster bar, 24 hours. I mean, giant green bar. It doesn't incorporate the gap because it was trading overnight, of course, and came down. The support was down here, and it just does an about face. Now, we know we reviewed yesterday how it was forming. That was right around. It was forming that bullish price action, had the move off of the low, and it was going sideways, and then it tried to make the initial dip there. You could see at 7:30, and it's like, this thing's going up. That was, my thinking at the time, and why I got in early before it even broke out. And so it just made a great move into the void. You can see how powerful this void concept is. Once it got to the destination, now it's begun, sometimes I call the heavy lifting of trying to hold up and absorb this supply, right? It's another MTS concept. People say, well, what does that mean, absorbing the supply? Well, everything's about supply and demand, whether you're looking at S&P futures, Apple Computer, crude oil, and it's about buyers and sellers. So there was no supply. That's what a void is. There was no supply on the way up other than people that wanted to take profits. And now as it reaches this area, and believe me, it doesn't always get up there like this, but yesterday it did. So now when it got there, and of course, once it broke out, which leads to the thought, well, it's going to go higher to the next reference point, and sellers take control and knock it back down. Now that's created uncertainty about if it can go higher or whether it's going to fall all the way back. And that's one of the reasons why you often get what we call a 1, 2, 3 type of a pattern, or the narrow range day, as buyers continue to come in and thinking, well, hey, 4,200 will hold, let me just buy there. Or of course, you've got people that, are there, on the dark side, and, they've got their fib levels or some extension or some wave count or GAN line, or, that esoteric hocus pocus type of analysis, that can become a self-fulfilling prophecy where, enough of them are looking at the same thing, like trader pivot lines. And so many traders that are looking at S&P futures to trade, they look at trader pivot lines, which you can go read about that, with traders used on the floor years ago. Anyway, that's another subjective thing, but you get enough people looking at something, they can become a force. Go and the GME thing today popping up there, or AMC, what it was, and Reddit getting together, and who cares about the technicals or fundamentals? Let's all jump on this thing and see if we can move it. So again, a monster reversal bar. It's into resistance. If this was to come back down here today, that would be amazing. Of course, I have no reason to think that it would, and that's what would make it amazing if it did, and what Dan calls a bear sandwich, and that would be super bearish. A bull sandwich, if you got two big red bars on either side of a big green bar. If it can hold up here, obviously that's a positive, because it's at resistance and it's going sideways. All right, Qs. They held up the best last week and they underperformed. That was expected, but they held up. Right? The fangs were weak early on. They did have the dip. It came back up again, but nowhere near the move that was seen in the S&Ps. Normal, because it just didn't have the void. So looking great. Got a bottoming tail bar. It's going sideways after making a new high. It looks great. Anything you did, Greg, about S&P? TD. Oh, is that a stock symbol, Dallas? I'm not following. Did the same thing you did. Ameritrade. Is that like Ameritrade? So you mean the stock AMTD had a similar pattern, is what you're saying? Let's take a look. Or some group at Ameritrade did that. This thing doesn't even trade anymore. Yeah, I think Schwab bought it. Okay. Well, you know what, Dallas, I'm using S&P. If someone mimicked what I did, they probably are a past student. you know, if they the same kind of thought process. And if those of you go to a webinar and you hear somebody use the term void, wide range igniting bar, I get a lot of students out there over the years. And so if they're using the same terminology that you hear here, you could bet your bottom dollar that they're a student. All right, let's continue. Nasdaq Futures, same story, chopping back and forth here, but wide. It's wide bars. So what we want to see from the bullish point of view is this thing tighten up, meaning narrower range bars. You had a little dip under the bar, it came back. It can go sideways here. A narrow range day would be ideal to contract that erratic volatility type of price action, and possibly could launch to new highs. All right, the Russell, that was beaten down. We covered that pre-market. It had the void, which you can see here, and that began to outperform early on, and came up into resistance, and it stalled. Still hasn't retraced as far as the S&P did into that red bar on the weekly, but this was certainly damaged more. And so in the coming days, the further this could retrace, or the lack of, is going to be telling, because just because you get one big great day doesn't change what happened over those days. So again, we can't get hung up on one day. Gapped up. This looks weird. Again, it's just not right. Something's wrong here. Let's just look at the contract. Now you can see the way it traded up into resistance and so on. Something going on with E-signal over there. All right. All right, so as we look at the futures, the takeaway is pretty much thinking consolidation day, and ideally from the bullish point of view, it doesn't get out of hand and go all the way back down. Is dominated by long put volume, so it's got exaggerated moves. So if there's a lot of long puts, bearish bets, which makes sense based on it going down, that could put a floor under it, but they're not going away. And as we look at these patterns, everything always comes down to the price pattern. Does it continue to go sideways and build support here? And then if it starts to go up, further in the next day or so, could those long put buyers help drive this higher by saying, hey, I got some money left on these things that aren't working out. Let me buy them back. All right. So transports. No, this was severely damaged. And while it came back, that did very little to repair the damage. And so the longer it stays down here, chopping around, this is one bet for the bearish side, whereas the Qs are a bet for the bullish side. And we've got these, opposing pieces of information, which leads to, I'm not so sure, which way this thing might go. Bitcoin, again, and I spoke about that yesterday, the growing interest. I should cover that pre-market. And you can see it's heading lower, breaking down below these pivot lows, which, the other concept of going sideways at resistance being bullish, well, going sideways at support and not going up is bearish. And so you've got several weeks here. We got the test. When this first happened, I said, if you go back and you want to listen to the pre-market recordings back in this time, I said the potential here, once this pivots for a retest and reversal, would be the bullish case. Well, that happened and it popped up and now it's failed. And so obviously that is bearish, that once it took this out, it couldn't go sideways or make a higher low. And I like to use this, term that bottoms are treacherous because they do stuff like this. And so now this is a greater than 100% retracement. And this other pivot low, it's right here. You got to be careful here about jumping on board, shorting with patterns that like this, because they could whip right back in your face. So this will be interesting what it does today. Can this turn into a bottoming tail? Where can it recover at all? Does it go lower? But the longer this stays like down here now, after multiple days down, say it goes sideways, for me, it opens up the thought of a measured move. And so we'll see if that plays out. And a measured move is one that has a momentum move. It reaches a destination and it fails. And historically, it makes measured moves. And that would put it, just eyeballing this, 2,000 points or so, it could be coming all the way back down to this support. So, watch that. We will watch it day to day. We'll see how this unfolds. And you guys, that have been watching here for a long time, especially on YouTube, you see how we interpret these patterns, and we can make the shift based on a big, turn. But so many times you see these patterns just play out as they do historically. And what Dad and I do is just pointing you to look at these historical patterns and then teaching you how to trade them in multiple time frames. And MT Live, we're going to be covering quality patterns tomorrow. All right, let's move on here. It's getting late. So oil, wide range bar, it just won't stop. Price, is there just, why is this demand for oil there? Well, maybe it's just more of a lack of supply based on what this administration is doing, trying to drive the price up for their Green Deal stuff. Certainly not nice. Actually, I think that's a little evil. Gold. This is extended. It just held there yesterday. It didn't make a big move, but it has the potential for a counter trend move now. So if you're an intraday trader watching this here, if this bottoms out and can start moving above here, a long gold trade might be in the cards. And we see that, the dollar is down a little bit. So this goes down, that should go up. You can keep an eye on that. Silver, short-term extended, but it's not bouncing yet. So that's bearish for now. And what else? I think we covered everything, guys. The Dow, right? So that was one that led the way down, broke support, had a big reversal day yesterday. Gap up. Let's look at the diamonds so you can see the gap. So it's still damaged goods. Comes up here. There's going to be sellers. So we'll see what today brings. And there's a lot to keep an eye on and see how things will unfold today based on the pockets of strength and other pockets of weakness that occurred and so on. All yours, Dan.
All right. Good morning. All the opens look fine. So if you have any questions, ask. All right. Crowd, we have a put spread on this. I tighten the stop. Let's see here. McGraw, you asked me about Lily. So is this a quality buy setup? No, because it originated from a bear gap. And I wish it had more, more support here, because it did make the turn, but if this fails, then it can go lower. Humana was on our list yesterday. Still looks great. Bottoming pattern. A little retest here. Sam, NNOX. Yeah, NNOX. NNOX actually stopped us out on that blip under 29. Oh, that was unfortunate. One little blip hit us. Uber, that's a bearish close. We actually had lift on our long watch list. Yeah, that's worth watching. Yesterday's low. Yeah, Splunk I have here. I sent it out to our Telegram folks, saying it's a put spread idea. So let's keep an eye on that. Let me put that in the window. The Bitcoin is getting hit again. Greg showed you it went under 30,000. Here's the BITW. Just, we've been talking about this right here, this little bear 1, 2, 3 breakdown. And that's just been nasty. And we've been saying it looked lower. Ether, we said way up here, it looks like it was going to 20. And then we said next pit stop was a 200. We said the weekly looked lower. So yeah, that's in those stocks. MicroStrategy, we talked yesterday, bearish gap under these bars. We wanted to shorten out of the money call spread, but it was just too spready. But that was a good day trade short. You always got the riots. Yeah, you got Riot, Mara, Coin. Those are kind of in MicroStrategy. And yeah, MicroStrategy, let's keep an eye on that for a call spread. And then you got Square, obviously, is in there. We were trying to sell a put spread on Tesla yesterday, and it triggered price, but we didn't get the credit. So actually, just because of the bearish retracement right here, I'm going to send out an alert saying to hold off on Tesla, and then just so you don't have an order there, and we will watch it manually and repost it. Now we're trying to get into ARKK, Lulu, and TAN. Those were all put spreads that triggered on price, but we did not get our credit. So let's see, ARK. Now see, ARK, if it hits, I'm okay with that one. But see, the retracement's okay. Lulu, same with this. So those two I'll keep, and then TAN. TAN I'll keep for now, because we're not filled. Saying time in 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, what time frame? Saying I see no 1, 2, 3 anywhere. It's not jumping out at me. Let's see here. YouTube asking about Sava. Sava for a long. The only problem with Sava long is it's the biggest wide range bar since the May low or even the April low. It was a bullish breakout yesterday. It's just getting extended is all. So it's now, it might be rolling on the 15. So it's just not an ideal place to enter is all, because it's extended. Fubo alarm, Greg posted this yesterday. A nice wide range breakout. Yeah, spiders upper right, they're selling all. Yeah, coin looks horrible. Wow, if this is going to make another leg down, this is kind of where you look at the behavior of the stock. So let's just say from here, 240-ish. I mean, this thing could easily fall $20 is what I was getting at. Other than this gap reversal, it's at all-time lows. Do you remember that's the one that everyone in the cab drivers, Uber drivers were talking about that IPO? And I said, danger, my contrarian signals tell me that stay away from it long on the IPO. All right, Humana still looks great, but I'm chilling right now. Looking up at my 15-minute charts, I see Roku's bullish 15, and that's powering up. I'm seeing more things rolling over than I am rallying. MA here, we were watching with Visa. I'm neutral and sidelined right here. I mean, that Fubo triggered looked great. Of the FANGs, yeah, Apple looks good. Yesterday was a very bullish continuation bar. For it to trade under this green bar and then close, have a new closing breakout. You know, Microsoft's threatening all time. Microsoft's a 1, 2, 3. If it closes here, that's a quality one. That's a quality 1, 2, 3 if it closes here. Look, CLOV is on my long watch list. I posted that as a watch. Little gap up into this red bar. It was a bullish pre-market. So that's not bad at all. I'm just not going to rush into things. GME. GME bullish gap to the top range of yesterday's breakdown bar. 30-minute high, McGraw. 30-minute high. Let's watch a put spread. Yeah, I canceled those shorts.